Moneyball is directed by Bennett Miller, written by Aaron Sorkin, starring Brad Pitt, Jonah Hill, Philip Seymour Hoffman, among many other people, where it tells the story of Billy Beane, the general manager of the Oakland Athletics, who's finding himself in a very difficult position, trying to make his team competitive again after losing certain key players. With the help of his new assistant, Peter Brand, played by Jonah Hill, they come up with a very unorthodox method that puts them on the receiving end of a lot of backlash and pushback from other people around them. But inevitably, they manage to prove those people wrong once their team manages to have some success. More or less, we're in the heart of baseball season, and I don't really think it's any better time to talk about Moneyball other than this. Personally, this is one of my favorite sports movies, or baseball movies in particular, as opposed to other films in the genre. We see it from the perspective of somebody who's in a very high position in a sports team. Given that this is based on a true story, it was inevitable that this was going to be told in some kind of form of media. Billy Beane, played by Brad Pitt, is the general manager of the Oakland A's, as I said earlier, and he's in a really difficult bind because the Oakland A's did very well in the 2001 season, making to the first round of the playoffs, but in the offseason, they lost 3 of their key players, including Johnny Damon and Jason Giambi, so with an extremely limited budget, he has to find a way to get certain players back onto his team and make them competitive again, trying to go through all the usual ways that he knows, but isn't really satisfied with what he sees.
Is that there are rich teams and there are poor teams. Then there's 50 feet of crap. And then there's us. If we try to play like the Yankees in here, we will lose to the Yankees out there.
Until he meets Peter Brand, played by Jonah Hill, who works for the Indians, and he learns through this guy a certain formula that's used to look on the players' statistics and figure out what's the best probability of them scoring runs or getting on base. Peter gives Billy this list of people that he analyzed from other sports teams, where statistically they have a really good chance of getting on base, but the thing with these players is that they were very undervalued by the baseball establishment. But yet they're not really that expensive to acquire, so with this formula, Billy decides to go ahead with this plan and use it in order to turn the odds in the casino, as he later says to the scouts in the movie. And probably the best scene in the movie is when he lays out this plan to all the baseball scouts in the room, where they talk about getting certain players due to their raw talent, like this guy's got the best bat, he's got the best swing, the ball just bounces off his bat, he's got the best body, he's the best athletic ability. And inevitably though, Billy says, but do they get on base? They have all these attractive qualities and all, but can they get on base? So he lays it all out to all the people in there, choosing certain players like Jeremy Giambi, David Justice, and Scott Hatteberg.
Scott Hatteberg.
Who? Hatteberg.
Exactly. Sounds like an Oakland A already.
It's funny hearing that now, knowing that Chris Pratt plays Scott Hatteberg, and who he later played in his career. But Billy, that didn't come out right. No, that's right, Art. Here, you gotta carry the one. Do you want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah. I've always liked Brad Pitt as an actor. I think this is one of his best movies. I don't really see that many movies where he's done a really bad job, or I don't think I've ever seen him be bad in a movie, and I don't think he's really chosen many movies that have been really, truly awful. One of those actors that clearly is a very high profile and famous celebrity. You usually see him on the tabloids at the supermarket and all that, but luckily he never really comes off as showy or flashy. He really brings a good sense of realism to his characters, and he also brings a really good amount of humor too. And I really like the relationship that he has with his young daughter. He's divorced, so he has to have visitation rights with his young daughter, and I adore the scene where she plays the guitar in the guitar store. His reaction to it is just so, oh man, I love it. I even have that song that she plays on my iPhone. Every once in a while I listen to it. Now as for Jonah Hill, okay, I'm just remembering how I thought of the guy before I saw this movie, because I didn't really think much of him. I always saw him as like this stupid, annoying comedy guy. And then when I saw that he was in this movie, I thought, oh my God, really? Jonah Hill? Oh, okay, prove me wrong. But at that time, seeing him play a serious role, I was caught completely off guard by that. His performance is excellent, and I love his chemistry with Brad Pitt. They work so perfectly together. He's a college graduate in economics. Up until now, has never had a job in any place at all. And thanks to Billy empowering him, he gains more confidence in finding players based on the statistical probability of them scoring runs and getting on base. And another great scene when he and Billy are trying to get this trade taken care of from some other team. This whole scene is basically him and Brad Pitt talking on 2 random telephones, trying to get this trade done. It is one of the most enticing and thrilling scenes that I've ever witnessed. My mom and I quote this movie sometimes to each other. She'll say, "He's an all-star, Joe," and I'll go like this. And a lot of that is due to the script by Aaron Sorkin. Although I think he was a co-writer, no introduction necessary, but Aaron Sorkin is one of the best screenwriters in Hollywood. Wrote screenplays for various movies like A Few Good Men, The American President, Charlie Wilson's War, Steve Jobs, and The Social Network. Dialogue that he gives these characters feels very authentic, especially from the direction of Bennett Miller, who directed the film Capote, which I have not seen, and that also stars Philip Seymour Hoffman. This is a very dialogue-heavy movie, and if you know that going in, it's going to be a lot easier for you to digest. That being said, the pacing sometimes is a little slow. Sometimes it just kind of meanders a little bit in order for it to get to the next point. And there are a couple of scenes where it's like, okay, we got to get to this scene in order for this big scene to happen. And the late Philip Seymour Hoffman doesn't really have a huge part in here, and he's not really in there for very much. But his character, Artie Lange, I hope I said that right, has a little bit of a beef with Billy Beane. He's only got 1 year left on his contract, and when he finds out what Billy is doing with the team, he's refusing to start certain players at first base, particularly Scott Hatteberg, who's not really good at throwing the ball due to an injury in his elbow. As the season starts to go on and the Oakland A's don't really do so good, Billy gets fed up and decides to trade the first baseman that Artie's starting, forcing him to start Hatteberg at first base. You are outside of your mind. But inevitably, Artie comes around to Scott Hatteberg, who used to play for the Boston Red Sox. Chris Pratt plays him very timidly and very quietly, but someone you could tell has really great potential if given the right coaching and the right opportunity. And I love the payoff that we get of Scott hitting the ball for a home run, giving the Oakland A's a 20-game winning streak, which at the time was the longest in the history of the American League. And the thing that I really love about this movie, in a lot of ways it is an underdog story, but how very tastefully it's done. Because once Billy announces his plan to the scouts, nobody believes that he's seen this thing properly. And once the team goes out on the field to their very rocky start, Billy is critiqued at every single corner, and he cannot bear to be in the stadium while they play. But inevitably, as things go along, he's able to prove everybody that he was in the right. It's just like in the movie Miracle, where Kurt Russell's character says, I'm not looking for the best players, I'm looking for the right ones. Bill Belichick and the Patriots did it for 20 years. Howie Roseman and the Philadelphia Eagles did it during their Super Bowl run a few years ago. Heck, even the Boston Red Sox adapted this formula 2 years after, and what do you know? They broke the curse of the Bambino, winning the World Series for the first time in 86 years. So obviously this does work in some fashion if you know what you're doing. And he ends up being pretty dissatisfied with the outcome of the season since they don't really get that far in the playoffs. While listening to an audio tape from his daughter, he feels some sort of comfort and sense of peace knowing that he really showed that this thing was really capable of doing something special. If you haven't seen Moneyball, give it a watch. You don't really have to necessarily be into baseball in order to like this movie. I think if you're open to like a good drama, good acting, and some really good humor, and if you like movies that are based on true stories, this movie is the one for you. Moneyball, I think, is really underrated. Should definitely get a lot more credit than it's gotten. And I think in some ways it actually has. In fact, Jonah Hill got Oscar nominated for Best Supporting Actor or Best Actor at the time. If that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what will. And even though I'm a Phillies fan, I can appreciate a good sports movie, no matter what team it's about. Those are my thoughts on Moneyball. What are your guys' thoughts on the movie if you've seen it? Comment below and tell me, and I'll see you guys in the next video.